All right. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and then get going here. Oops. Righty. Can everybody see that okay? Great. All right. So without further ado, I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Tai Mendenhall. I'm a professor here at the University of Minnesota, and I wear a number of different hats depending on what day it is, which is kind of the life of a professor in different ways, and especially at the university with its driven to discover mission. Really driven by research and scholarship, teaching, outreach, and service. And so one of the principal things that I do on the outreach and service is really just the honor to work with Courtney and others on the Medical Reserve Corps. And I've been connected with this group for a number of years now. And so that is the hat that I'm wearing today. Okay. And in talking though about burnout and compassion fatigue as a topic, it's not too far of a reach from the other hats that I do wear, because I am a clinician, a mental health provider, and educator, and I work with students really across that continuum from undergraduate, master's, and doc students, and certainly in medicine with our medical students and medical residents, primarily in family medicine. But then also as we get out of the classroom and get out of the conventional clinic context that we inhabit into trauma response work, trauma response teams through the Medical Reserve Corps. Burnout and compassion fatigue are important. I mean, these are important topics everywhere. As a student, certainly as a healthcare provider in training, as a teacher, as an administrator, a variety of different people connected to a variety of different moving parts of our larger health systems experience burnout and compassion fatigue. This is a conversation that I think gets a lot of lip service and not a whole lot of action. I'll just be honest. And I think that has started to change more substantively over about the last 10 years. And that would be a whole nother lecture, maybe in terms of why, but I'm glad it's happening. To start though, so that's kind of an intro, but to start though, I want to encourage you all, and it's harder when we're on Zoom. If we were in person, I think this would be a lot more interactive, obviously. But I want you all, as you're sitting there, with your post-it notes maybe, or just something on your desk or a piece of paper or whatever, start to maybe think about how we could do this title different in a way that's more applicable to you. Because if you read this right now, let's just read it together. Burnout and compassion fatigue: preventing and mitigating our risks through a combination of conventional wisdom and innovative technologies. That is so academic. It is so academic. And of course, we're at the University of Minnesota, and we are academic. And most of the books that we write, or the journal articles that we author, or the things that we put on the syllabus for students to read, et cetera, are academic. And this is how it sounds. But I think that one of the risks of academic sounding content is that we lose the humanness and really the salience of it. So this is what I want you to do. Write down a title that fits better for you. And that might sound, and I understand some of you might not do this because, you're not on the hook, you're on Zoom and nobody's going to know. That's totally fine. I mean, if that could also be a form of self-care, I'm going to pick and choose what I sign up for. But let me share with you some better titles as it connects to this. And this has come from students and colleagues that have been on the Medical Reserve Corps here with us at the University of Minnesota, and some of the other arenas that I work with clinically that have done this. It's better to prepare than it is to repair. If it's not broken, then you don't have to fix it. You bet. I wish we could get insurance companies maybe to support more prepare, efforts instead of repair efforts. That's kind of an aside. Practicing what we preach. You bet. I mean, a lot of my colleagues and residents talk about how we are post-call, living on caffeine and candy bars, burning the candle at both ends, talking to our patients about the importance of a balanced lifestyle and a good diet and date night with our spouse and spending time with our kids. And we don't do it. There's this culture in a lot of the efforts that we do of workaholism, of sleep deprivation as something to brag about. And we don't want anybody that we care for, that we serve, to do that, but we do it all the time, for sure. Contest in misery. I love this one. I don't know if anybody's ever gotten into a contest in misery with somebody. I would presume you have. You know, where you talk about your hard day, or you talk about how different things are going on that are making you stressed. And the very first thing that a person responds to with is how hard their day is, and how they maybe even have a worse experience, or how they experienced something just like yours, you know, last year, and this is what's happening. And it's like whoever wins this contest is more unhappy. And I'm not sure I'd want to win that contest, but we certainly hear it all the time. We hear contests in wisdom. We're looking for that one inspiring TED Talk that's going to change your life. We look for that one book, that one, series of whatever, for 3 payments of $19.95, this will, revolutionize your world. And humans are always after that simple solution. I mean, just look at the weight loss industry. There's always plenty out there to go buy, that one thing that will make you lose, 10 pounds a day and then just look like a supermodel by next weekend. And they sell because humans are always after something that is simple and that works fast. Can we focus on ourselves first? Certainly the tapping the wisdom of the airlines, absolutely. The person we're with 24 hours a day, maybe putting them on their to-do list. A lot of exercises that I do, and I'm actually going to present one here in a little, actually towards the end of our time. It floors me how often people's to-do lists, priorities are certainly clear, but literally do not include them. And again, stay tuned. We're going to come to that. Lessons in work-life balance. Am I really looking at work emails while I'm on vacation? A lot of us go on vacation with our families and we bring our laptops, and we're sitting there poolside working. I think maybe we need to reevaluate that. Why am I working while I'm sitting on the toilet? Doing work, home boundaries better. I don't know what a better example is than that. I hope as I'm going through this, you're writing down some of your own maybe ideas or titles. I missed my kid's field goal, and I've talked to folks that have created permanent memories for their kids. 12-year-old, gets the field goal or hits the home run, and they're looking over at mom, so excited, and mom's looking at her phone. Missed it entirely. Ways not to get a divorce. I think remembering who you're really married to, paying attention to each other instead of those phones. Sleep hygiene, again, phones. A lot of times phones, because they give us direct access to our work, can be a real problem. It messes up our sleep. We're looking at electronics instead of paper, and a lot of us know with sleep hygiene that we need to maybe do that better, but it's so hard sometimes to act on the insight. Okay. Attractively packaged poison. This is a big one. It's been getting a lot more attention in the healthcare professions. Healthcare providers, people in the business of serving others, broadly defined, have higher rates of a lot of struggles. Depression, anxiety, marriage and family therapists have higher divorce rates than the general population. Psychologists have higher rates of depression, oftentimes in the general population, and alcohol is within those statistics, and it really is attractively packaged poison. I mean, if you dilute it enough, it won't kill you. We consume it through carrier liquids like fruit juice or water, but it is not associated with anything good, and it can definitely be a slippery slope in terms of oftentimes the ways that we engage with it. I'm a rock, gravel, sand. We're going to get to that towards the end. And my hope is that by the end here, you all will not only see and understand yourself as a rock, but purposefully do different things that follow that wisdom. Okay, so what are your titles? What are your alternative titles? My goal today is to not teach you anything new, but instead to really emphasize and drive home a lot of the things that we forget, if that makes sense. And certainly maybe some of the details will be novel or add on to existing baseline stuff, but I can't imagine that anybody that would sign up for this presentation connected to the various organizations and institutions that would get you here are going to be really unfamiliar with a lot of this content. And the title, I think, drives home that insight to action bridge that oftentimes we miss. We know this stuff. It's just that we don't do it. Okay. So what title does work for you? What's your hook? Where would the rest of this content really land for you in a way and in a manner that, you don't just move on from here in about 45 minutes when we're all done. Okay, attention to healthcare, attention to a lot of this in healthcare, and just truth in advertising. This literature is framed around healthcare because that's where most of it is. Trauma work, trauma response work, deployments, medical reserve corps, emergency response, a variety of different names and ways that this is referred to, is situated in broader contexts of healthcare. So when I say healthcare, again, that's where we're getting this. But we recognize that burnout as a comparatively simple phenomenon, really just exhaustion and disengagement, underperformance as a consequence of work, and then compassion fatigue as much more complex and really pervasive across a variety of our humanness, the systems that inhabit us, like physical, and the systems that we inhabit, like our social circles, our families, our work environments. This happens across the bio, psycho, social, spiritual continuum of humans. And this literature is longstanding. Arguably in Native communities, it's always been this way. If you look at medicine wheel models, sacred circles of health, etc. In Western medicine, we started calling it the biopsychosocial model, and then nursing added spiritual. So now it's the biopsychosocial spiritual model. And we have 1,000 studies deep that confirm this. I mean, if you just pick something, anything really, depression, for example, could be coming from, low levels of serotonin in the brain, black and white thinking, self-disparaging narratives, self-sabotaging behaviors, that'd be the psycho, and the behavioral. Social, marriages that are in trouble, domestic violence, relationships that are dying of neglect, social, and then spiritual. And then social can certainly include workplace and a variety of other systems that, again, we inhabit. And then spiritual, super common in people, because most people do connect with a divine, broadly defined, and certainly there's differences across religion and spirituality. Most of us do it, at least in the contexts of crisis. Whether or not you go to church or synagogue once a week or something, it really is not connected to that. Most of us turn towards spiritual in contexts of crisis. Healthcare providers, however, really oftentimes struggle with what we call crises of faith, and that's coming. Okay, we see this across all practitioner groups: nurses, medical assistants, physicians, every sibling discipline in mental health, counseling, psychology, all of the psychologies, child psych, industrial psych, adolescent psych, school psych. Experimental psych. We see it across family therapy, medical family therapy, social work, medical social work, school social work. We see it across primary, secondary, tertiary care settings. We see it in settings that don't really fit into any of those boxes, usually because they include multiple of those boxes. And the healthcare worlds, the clinical world, that most of us that serve on medical reserve corps training, medical reserve corps are trained in the clinical applications of what we do, but also the financial worlds, which are essential, because if we can't keep the lights on, then we don't do our work. And then the operational worlds, which is so much behind the scenes and absolutely essential to the work, because it literally wouldn't happen with them. All of these groups struggle with burnout and compassion fatigue. Okay, and the statistics are rough. I'm just going to be honest. I mentioned them a little while ago. As it connects to alcohol, depression, as it connects to anxiety, as it connects to a variety of biopsychosocial presentations, which are coming up here in the next few slides. So conversations about resilience, what do we do? Start, I think, with assessment, and then self-assessment, and then go into action. But in a broader context, in terms of the lenses that we're using, what are we looking for? And that's a great question. I mean, any research, science, dissertation committee for a student, et cetera, is going to want you to operationalize your variables, ... And this is difficult in some ways because there's a lot of different ways that resilience as a response to compassion fatigue or burnout has been defined. And if you go into that literature, you're going to find stuff about bouncing back, bouncing forward, because you never go back to baseline. There's a variety of different types that applies to a variety of different systems. But the common themes across this is that it applies to us too, which oftentimes we forget because we're just trying to promote the resilience of the people that we serve. And it's about the capacity to adapt and bend more than it is the capacity to just be tough and strong. Contrary to the movies, where the superhero just, has the bullets bounce off of them or has an explosion happen or, watches a whole bunch of people die and really isn't fazed by it by the next scene. Humans don't in real life work that way. And the interactive and the systemic phenomenon of adapting and really bouncing forward is where much of our understanding is starting to go now. And so we need to start with ourselves, that person that we're with 24 hours a day, and really be honest about it. That's the insight. So we need to do that first before we go into the action. And this is also why I encourage you to come up with your own title when we began this. Because there is no panacea. There is no one way to do this. And for me to get up here and say, do this, then you won't burn out. Do that, then you won't have compassion fatigue would, first of all, be pretty arrogant because it would presume that I knew. and second, it would be pretty uninformed because our understandings of this stuff, it really highlights the complexities of people. Humans are complex creatures, and that there is no one size fits all for this. And one of the reasons that there is no one size fits all for this is because there is no one presentation of it. Okay, so if we start at individual, the person we're with 24 hours a day, we oftentimes see indicators. That would be what the research would call it. If you're going back to your research methods class, what are your dependent variables, independent variables? What are your moderating variables? What are your mediating variables? I won't make this a statistics class or a research methods class, but we need to start with understanding, okay, the common things that we see. And then as I go through this, see what resonates with you. Because some of this might not, but maybe in the next slide, some of the stuff on that slide will. Okay, so do you practice what you preach? A lot of folks in this work don't. I talked about being post-call and living on candy bars, talking to folks about sleep hygiene and good diet. We oftentimes feel fear or shame, stigma even, about admitting that we struggle too. That the physician can't get sick. They don't have the license or the latitude to get sick. Teachers that teach class are never allowed to miss class, but the students certainly, yeah, they can miss class because life happens. But if life happens to us, we're still going to be there in class. Why is that, right? And that we do really then underreport a lot of our symptoms of hurting, and then that creates a social isolation that exacerbates the problem. Our capacities for empathy paradoxically connected to the problem. A lot of us in healthcare are pretty bad at our boundaries. We have a hard time pronouncing, saying, and certainly living by the word no. We're always taking on more. We're already overextended, but we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to ever let anybody down. And so we oftentimes in the process let our own selves down. As it connects to our relationships, we know that social disconnection, social isolation, social disconnectedness, it's been operationalized in different research, is a bigger problem now than it's ever been in human history. We as a species are the most electronically connected, arguably, than we ever have been. And yet we are the most depressed, most anxious, most addicted, most in debt, and most socially disconnected cohort in human history, period. And healthcare providers, I would argue, maybe this is the world according to Tai. I'm not pulling up a specific study in my head right now, but I'm sure I could find one. Healthcare providers are notorious for this. We spend all day in a one-way intimacy for people that we serve, but the intimacy never comes back. It really isn't reciprocal. And, you know, the ethics codes say it shouldn't be. And I get that. But then we carry that over into our homes. We don't talk about our work. We're always doing our work, and that's the electronic devices. You know, and HIPAA, you know, for example, really doesn't allow us to answer the question when spouses or family asks us how we're doing, and so we keep it relatively light. And that's here that the superficial engagement that we have with other people oftentimes is a lot lighter than the depth that they can go into with us. And then second place to all things, our work is oftentimes first, and the rest of what we're up to is after that. Okay. Institutional, does this resonate with you? Again, these are common correlates that we oftentimes see with this stuff. That care is really a top-down, provider-driven type of thing. Promotion of help is good as long as we're offering it, but we don't want to take it, okay? And we're afraid of needing it because, you know, and this can vary depending on the institution that you're in, but does your employer know that you're struggling? Does that mean that your job is at risk? And that is a context that makes it very hard oftentimes to reach out. A lot of us get caught up in our charting, our documentation. We're frustrated that we're doing more paperwork than we are therapy, for example, if we're a therapist or healthcare, you know, medical interventions, teaching, etc. We're spending so much time on stuff that we don't see as, you know, clinically helpful. But if we don't dot the I's right and cross the T's right, we could lose our jobs. This is tough. And it's in a context oftentimes of what we call RVUs, relative value units, on how much money you're making in the clinic, for example, versus the clinical outcomes of the people that you do serve. Spiritual factors, you know, I talked about this a little bit ago with the crisis of faith. When we're hearing over and over and over again the stories that we do in this kind of work, it's a risk that oftentimes we endure, that, you know, the God that we thought we knew, you know, however, or in what religion or spirituality that God exists, was or is supposed to be all knowing and all loving and all powerful. And you know, you hear one more story about a school shooting where you know, a young child is murdered, and you know, if God was all knowing, would have seen it coming. If God was all loving, would have cared, and if God was all powerful, would have stopped it. And then there's this gradual, and sometimes it's an event, but usually it's a process, disconnection with spirituality and faith, which is hard because, again, that's where humans, really, as long as there's been humans, have tended to go during times of crisis. Okay. And there's other things, and you can see them there, and I'm happy to share the slides with anybody that's interested. But in the interest of time, I'll then conclude here over the next few minutes regarding the insights and the personal kind of assessments of what types of symptoms then come from those risk factors, again, across that biopsychospiritual continua that healthcare is generally positioned around now. So physical symptoms, you know, this slide, or actually any of the slides, could probably be like a half-day discussion or workshop. But I will say that across literature on physical symptoms, for all of its variation, and if you go back to that research methods class with the Venn diagrams of things that different folks share in common, insomnia would be in the middle. Insomnia, I have never read a study that doesn't identify insomnia as a physical manifestation or struggle with compassion fatigue or burnout. The flip would be hypersomnia, and hypersomnia usually does flip with insomnia. So insomnia is again always there. If you have ever on the call right now experienced yourself as physically tired but unable to turn your brain off and go to sleep, then you know what we're talking about here. And all of us experience insomnia from time to time, you know, for whatever reason. I would say it's almost universally maddening to experience it, and it certainly can screw your day up. But when people are decompensating in burnout and compassion fatigue, this just becomes how they do their evenings, and every single symptom that's physical will follow. Sleep is probably the most important thing, second to oxygen, that your body needs. It is when it repairs, it's when it recharges, it's when it does everything that it needs to do to keep going. And emerging literature actually with what we call diabetes type 3, you know, a lot of us know about diabetes type 1 and 2 as metabolic conditions from the neck down. The brain as a very inefficient blood sugar user of the body, and with the blood-brain barrier and the ways that the brain isolates itself from the rest of the body, as it should, only cleans itself, repairs and does what it needs to do during deep sleep. And chronic sleep deprivation is one of the reasons why this metabolic problem is happening nowadays with the brain, and it's recognized as a contributor to early onset dementia, not just because people are getting older, which is oftentimes how it's narrated, but one of the reasons that we're seeing dementia rise is because as a cohort of humans, we've never been more sleep deprived than we are today. And certainly, again, in healthcare, that's especially extant. So psychological symptoms that are going to follow this, you know, and you can read the slide, but I'll say that some of the things that we really start to notice, especially in people that serve people in a lot of the work that we do, is that you can be really good at your work all day long. You're doing really good work with the people that you serve, and then you road rage on your way home, or you bite your spouse's heads off, or you have zero patience for your child that's acting out. And then that starts to creep into your work, and you really start to blame victims. You start to have less and less capacity for empathy with the people you serve. And then the poor work performance logistically starts oftentimes very quickly around that people are getting behind on their charting. Their emails are not professional. They don't have any greetings in the emails, no salutations in the emails. It's just the one-liners. You know, just really kind of disengaged and oftentimes just flat out rude interactions that we start to have with colleagues, not only electronically, but, you know, in the hallways, you know, etc. And then as it connects to a variety of the different hats that we wear, ethical violations, forgetting releases of information, talking inappropriately about folks, coming home and actually telling your spouse all about your day when you're breaking HIPAA and you're going too far with that. There's a variety of different ways that this looks. Most relationships, contrary to Hollywood, the depictions there, most relationships die of neglect. They don't die of conflict. And people that are burning out, have compassion fatigue, are especially at risk of this. They come home and they get back on their phone. They don't have family dinner anymore. They have they might eat in the same room, but they're just watching TV every time. Their interactions with their spouse are absolutely just minimal. And then, you know, and it's a process. Again, it's not an event. But the increased isolation, not only from people that you're literally sleeping in the same bed with at night, starts to overlap into the other social circles that you inhabit. And then crisis of faith, like I talked about. So as we start to respond to this, I think one of the other reasons, out of like tons and tons of example titles that I get over the years from different students and colleagues, like the problem with searching for a single panacea is really connected to what we know from literature as, well, we know better from literature, because promoting resilience and doing a response and taking care of that person that we're with 24 hours a day is in no way, shape, or form connected to any panacea. We have to lean into and embrace the complexity of us, instead of looking for that single TED Talk that's going to inspire us, or that single pill that's going to fix everything, that single book that's going to change our lives. The biopsychosocial spiritual complexity across both prevention and cure is messy, but it invariably works. And it echoes what we've known for a long time in mental health, for example. Multimodal treatments, medicine plus therapy plus social groups plus exercise, etc., always outperform putting all of your eggs in one basket, that you're just going to go to the gym, or that you're going to change nothing, but you're going to see a therapist every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Those are not necessarily bad, but they abysmally perform in comparison to multimodal interventions. And so we need to do the same. The resilience in physical self, I mean, there's a ton of things that you could do, but I want to really emphasize going back to the number one physical problem, flipping it to the response in my opinion, the number one physical response, because if you're doing this well, a lot of this other stuff is going to be able, or is going to be more accessible to you. Sleep hygiene, just Google it. Okay. The thing is, most of us know this stuff. It's just that we don't do it again. But what I emphasize is that just about anybody in Western worlds has taken a psychology class. If your high school didn't require it of you, your college certainly did. And if you didn't finish high school or college, you probably have heard of this. Basic operant and classical conditioning that we learned from Pavlov's dogs, that the dogs are sitting there hanging out and hear a bell and, get fed. And, it's nice that they get fed. They're excited. And then they hear a bell again and, they get fed. And pretty soon they took these two things that had nothing to do with each other, the bell and the food, and they put them together, right? I mean, humans do this all the time. This is why we get nostalgic, during particular times of year when we hear songs that remind us of holidays that, the radio only plays those songs during that time of year, or why we get sad when we drive by the restaurant that we always used to have dinner with our ex with at the end of the week. And now that they're our ex, we're sad, we miss them. The breakup was hard, but we're always reminded of that every time we see that place that we associate with them. Humans associate stuff all the time. And so my question to you right now, and this is where I wish we were in the same room, because I'd love to get some hands raised or maybe some uncomfortable faces. And I'm just as human as you are. So just because I talk about this doesn't mean I don't, guilty as charged, right? Although I will say I fixed this one in my life. So ask yourself, question right now, do you have a TV in your bedroom? Right? Do you have a TV in your bedroom? And let's keep going. Do you look at your phone when you're in bed? Do you read when you're in bed? When you cannot sleep at night, do you toss and turn in bed? Do you stay there and you're thinking about how much this is horrible, how this sucks, that tomorrow you're going to be like a zombie because you can't sleep, and you're looking at the clock and toss and turn, toss and turn. Maybe you try some deep breaths for a while. Maybe you try to relax and it just doesn't work. And every 5 minutes you're looking at the clock. If any of those is true, then you got some work to do, because all of those are awake activities. I mean, you should not have a TV in your bedroom. I mean, the only two things you should associate with the bed are sleeping and sex, and you don't do either one of those with the TV. So the TV cannot be in the bedroom anymore. That's my homework assignment to you. If you have a TV in your bedroom, after this talk, go and move it, unplug it. I don't care how inconvenient it is, move it, get it out of there. If you're looking at your phone in bed, then go look at your phone in the living room. If you're reading in bed, go read in the living room. Do anything else besides associate awake with the bed. If you do that, you're going to sleep better. And any physician worth their weight in salt, if a patient comes to them asking for anesthesia through, Seroquel or Trazodone or whatever, please doc, help me sleep. Not that those medicines can't be helpful for some people, but a good physician is going to ask you about sleep hygiene first. And if you have a TV in your bedroom, they're going to encourage you to do that before they write a prescription for you, because you've trained yourself to stay awake when you're in bed. You right? I mean, of course you're awake in bed. This is, look at all the different days and nights and times that you've done this. So, excuse the pun. I mean, it doesn't work overnight, but usually within a week or two, if people are really following sleep hygiene, they don't need trazodone. They don't need melatonin. They're sleeping better. Okay, so I really emphasize that, and a lot of the responses, as it connects to this type of content, do. So, and again, in the interest of time, I'm just picking and choosing here, but for you, because all of us are different, really what lands for you is really kind of our call here. So as it connects to psychological self, so we're moving past the physical into the psychological, the literally having self time on your to-do list, and I'm going to return to this when we do that rock, scrabble, sand again, is I would argue essential. The message here, because I'll return to the rock, scrabble, sand idea in a little bit, is that if you frame self-time or self-care universally in escape from work narratives, I would argue you're doing it wrong. Because that communicates you really don't like your work, and the only way to self-care is to get away from work. The burnout literature really challenges this, and it can be a really privileged thing to say, because it can be easier said than done. But the message there is just find another job. I mean, if your self-care is to escape from work, then maybe your work is actually the problem. And so self-time is broader than this. And a lot of the ways too that you integrate attention to this at work across the social selves, which is coming, is also part of compassion fatigue prevention or mitigation. So what is self-time for you? And again, we're gonna come to that here more later. The interests outside of work, huge. I'm not saying it's not. I mean, there's more to life than work. A lot of my graduate students are just floored by that idea that there's actually more to life than school. But there is. It's just that you got to do your work in school in a particular way too. Don't just escape from it. And that can be a real big psychological kind of shift. Okay. So in the institutional selves, I tell my students to sit in front of the mirror and literally practice how to say no. Say the word. And understanding oftentimes that supervisors and colleagues are going to have more respect for you by drawing the boundaries than overextending yourself and burning out. Okay. The group huddles, as we call them here at Minnesota, the peer and the group support. Don't eat lunch at your desk. It's better in the different contexts that you work to everybody go to the kitchen and hang out with each other, learn about who's got a dog, and who's doing a home remodeling project. And sometimes groups in the hospital that I work in will go do laps. In Minnesota, it's half the year you got to stay inside, so we're doing laps through all the tunnel systems and talking and exercising and getting to know your colleagues. And that connects to resilience in the institutional self. And then understanding when the work is good enough. You don't need to revise and read the same report a dozen times before you hand it in. It's good enough most of the time, about 10 revisions ago. And it's better to do 10 things well than it is to do 11 things spread too thin. And again, there's a variety of examples that we could talk about regarding that. So connected to relationships outside of just yourself, which overlaps again to the previous couple of slides, your family, your partner, your kids are oftentimes the first people that we neglect when we start to slip with this stuff. And we really need to reclaim that. And so, coming home and agreeing to leave work at work and not pull your laptop back up and keep working, to sit on the couch and talk to each other instead of sit on the couch and lose yourself in your phone, to have a family meal together where everybody's, engaging about their day, and they're not asking questions like, how was your day? They're asking questions like, hey, I remember from what you were telling me yesterday that this was coming up. Tell me about your day. It's a very different question. And then alongside that, your friends and your colleagues, there's a variety of different ways that looks. It could be through your faith community, professional organizations. We all have them. Most of us, if we go to conferences, really it's a professional family reunion, because you can get your continuing education credits online for a hell of a lot cheaper. I don't think that's why people go to conferences. They go to conferences so they can see their friends, their friends from graduate school, etc. I mean, do that. Humans are social creatures. We need to honor it. If all you do is go to work and go home, a lot of our literature on compassion fatigue prevention will say that you're doing it wrong. Spiritual, this one, and I think that the emptiness of this slide is telling. It's just because it's so deeply personal. I mean, how do you measure spirituality? I mean, you can't do it by church attendance. I mean, that's been going down for the last 30 or 40 years. Although some research that's struggled with this, more mixed methods and qualitative, have said or talked about spirituality actually going up, and big differences between religion and spirituality. But spirituality for you, yeah, maybe it is with your faith community. But it might be with your music or your art or the outdoors, with your pets, as you're outside, playing frisbee with your dog. I mean, there's a variety of different ways that we ground ourselves. And I think that as we really kind of honor that humanness to do it, and in a lot of different circles, even talking about it, is so powerful as a rebuilder and a restorer when we're struggling, and as a maintainer when we're doing okay. So I'm looking at the clock here. So as we're looking at resources and tools for all this stuff, you can take my PowerPoint. I'm happy to share it. But there's also a variety of different books, websites, apps that are available here. Some of them are empirically supported, some of them aren't. So I would encourage you to be a critical consumer of it. Apps, for example, on your phone, I think that the most support right now in healthcare is the Calm app. It's really quite good. It's not super expensive, and there's a variety of different places you can go. The First Responder Toolkit, this was designed at the University of Minnesota by the Medical Reserve Corps. So here we are. This one's free. Just go to firstrespondertoolkit.com. It's specifically designed for people that are in Medical Reserve Corps and this type of work, okay? And it certainly applies to your day job, because we recognize that you're not always doing deployments every day, and honestly, thank goodness. But it tracks just like you would if you're losing weight, and it's encouraging to see, hey, this graph is showing a downward trend. I've lost a couple pounds over this last week. And in the same way, there's measures here, and it's completely confidential. I mean, once you log on and get your password, nobody's looking at your data. Nobody can. It's just set up that way. But you can figure out where you are in terms of compassion fatigue measures, trauma risks, and track in synchrony with self-care work that you're doing, outcomes connected to the progress that you're making. I think that as you look at and you are poking around on this resource, similar to what I've been saying all along, is that we're all different. Colleagues and students that use this resource really resonate with and rally around certain parts of it because that works for them, and then they leave other parts of it alone, and as they should. I mean, it's a buffet of things, and you get to personalize what you're up to. Okay. So when we look at our resilience quotient, this is kind of the affectionate term that we do here at Minnesota. This isn't official. I mean, if you Google resilient quotient, I'm not sure you're going to find much. It's kind of, again, it's a colloquial term that we use here. Really, these are three of the big things that we emphasize, and I'm going to talk about them and then conclude on one kind of call to action with the remaining time. The first is that you got to be intentional about anything that you're doing. If it's sleep hygiene, make the neighborhood know that you just moved the TV out of the bedroom. If it's exercise, find an exercise buddy. So at 6 o'clock when you really don't feel like it, oh God, I don't want to go to the gym. You do, because your buddy's going to be there. And you know what's great is that maybe your buddy didn't want to go either, but you're both working out because you were committed to each other to go. Make it intentional, make it out loud, right? Because if it's not intentional, it's not going to last. And as you move out of a lot of the arenas of time, I think that you roll in the intentionality of a longer list of things that you're up to really starts to enrich your life. Again, there is so much more to life than what we're up to professionally. The rock, gravel, sand, a lot of us in healthcare have heard about this. It's a beautiful metaphor. If you can imagine a glass jar as a metaphor for your day, you know, or your life, and your task is to fit rocks, gravel, and sand into this. It's only going to fit if you put in the rocks first. You got to put in the big stuff first. You know, the gravel, that kind of wiggles around the rocks. The sand, shake, 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 fills in all the nooks and crannies. And so the rocks are the most important things. One of those rocks is you, physically, psychologically, you. The person you're with 24 hours a day. This is where it floors me that a lot of people don't put themselves on their list. Another rock, career, of course. I mean, big difference in literature between career and job. Job is not a rock. Career is definitely a rock. I'm not saying dish your work. Your relationships, your marriage, absolutely a rock. I don't know if there's very many other rocks. I mean, some folks, it's in their faith community, maybe different groups that they're engaged with. It's a short list. That's the point. Gravel, this is important, but the world won't end if you don't take care of it right now. You know, so when you get that light on your dashboard that says you got 10% oil left in your car, or you know, just go get it done. Go get it done in the next, you know, week or so. But if you don't get it done today, that's okay. Just keep going, right? Sand, you know, does anybody care? And really what oftentimes people get when they really assess this is that they're doing it all backwards. You know, you're running around like this mad, crazy, busy, overscheduled person with all this essential things you must do, you know, check, 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 check down your to-do list. And one more time you come home because you don't have time to go to the gym and you're too tired. So you're neglecting your body. One more time you come home, I'm sorry, honey, not tonight. And you're neglecting your relationships. One more time you miss your kid's ball game, but at least your house is clean. You know, at least you're caught up on Facebook, you know, and therein is the problem, right? So every morning, get up. What are your rocks? And make sure that the rocks are in there first, and then you're going to be able to do the rest. Okay. With the starfish story, this is just connected to the wisdom that, you know, if you're, you know, and there's stories behind this, you can Google it. But if you're helping starfish back into the water, you know, because that's how we usually find them on the beach. They can't get back into the water, so they die there. You know, and the question, and there's different narratives about this, is, you know, why? If you look all the way down the beach and you look this way and that way, I mean, it's just as far as you can see, there's beach and there's water and there's sand and there's starfish. You know, what difference could it possibly make? And it's a beautiful story. If you go Google this, and again, there's different versions of it, but in response, you know, the person that was asked this question, you know, just smiled and picked up another starfish and helped it into the water, and they said it made a difference for that one. And I think that's kind of the whole point, you know, because if you're taking care of you, right, and you're the best that you can be in every way that means, the honor, the privilege that you have to do the work that you do with the person or the family that's in front of you, that's what matters, right? And no, you will not reach everybody. You can't. But the one that you're connected with right there, you're reaching them, right? And so honor that and everything that means. Okay, I'm going to conclude on this, and I'm doing okay. I got 6 minutes. Oh, good. I think when you put all this together, it's important to remember that you get what you prioritize. Okay, all of us, and I want to be super sensitive to this. So hear me loud and clear when I say this. All of us have different lives, and some of us comparatively simple. We're single. We don't even have a dog or a cat. A cat would be even less maintenance. You're by yourself, and maybe you have other resources coming in for family, whatever. And there's other people who have, they're a single parent and they have a ton of responsibilities connected to those kids. They're trying to hold down a couple of jobs. They're really, they're spread thin. Okay. And I get that. There's a wide variety of what we're struggling with. Absolutely. One of the things that makes us all the same is that we only have 24 hours in the day. That's it. Doesn't matter who you are. There's nobody that has more, and there's nobody that has less. Okay. And if you multiply that by 7, you have 168 hours. All of us have that. If you're working 40 hours a week, and let's just use that because that's kind of the baseline that most people think of as a full-time job. And you're sleeping 8 hours a night, and let's just be honest, most of us don't, but let's just pretend you are. That leaves you 72 hours left of awake time for other things. Almost 2 more full-time jobs of time that you have awake for arguably your rocks, for the gym, for your marriage, for your kids, for your whatever. 72 hours after you've worked a full-time job and slept 8 hours a night. So what are you doing with it? And I'll just project. I know a lot of us on this call probably wish we had 40-hour week jobs, but let's goose it up. If you're working 50 hours a week, you still have 62 hours left. That's a ton of time. This is awake time, and you can just keep doing the math there. I think that we forget that there's a lot of time left over. And a lot of folks, when they present to me in different ways, they say, I just don't have time. And that's, let's just be honest too, that's part of our public narrative. Hey, how are you doing? The first thing most people say, oh, I'm so busy. It's just part of our national narrative. I don't know. What are you doing with that time? When people ask me or they talk to me about this and they're struggling with it, I encourage them to watch less TV. I encourage them to put their phone down. And there's different apps that you can put on your phone, ironically, that will track how much time you're on your phone. And the statistics for how much we watch TV and how much we're on our phone will floor you. If you want more time, start there. Okay. But you get what you prioritize. That's the point. And so when you rock, scrabble, sand your life, and when you really critically think about what you're doing with that single number of hours, 24 hours a day, that, makes us all the same, oftentimes that really can push us to start doing and personalizing what we're up to in ways that are so important and so good in terms of our own growth and healing, and so amazing in terms of our health individually, how we show up in our relationships, and how we do this work. Deal? Okay. No panacea. Do it your way. Make it public. Okay. But then enjoy it along the way. This is extraordinary work that we're all in. And I think that as we can hold on and remember that, we're going to find joy when we're at work, and we're going to find joy when we're not there, when we're in other places and in other arenas and in other worlds of our life, because there is so much more to work. There's so much more to life than there is to work. Let's walk the walk on that, and we're going to do better in all those different worlds. Deal? All right. And I think I have, just a couple minutes left.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tai. That was really
Thank you
great.
for hanging with me.
Yeah, I think, the message, like you said, a lot of it's not new to any of us, but the challenge is getting ourselves in that frame of mind to take care of ourselves a little bit better. So thank you so much. If anybody has a question, we might have a minute or two to do some questions. And then for those of you who joined us a little bit late, I shared that we have a new video that we just made for our University of Minnesota MRC that I'm going to play if anybody wants to stick around for a few minutes afterwards. So
Yeah,
Any
I'd also
questions?
say just to honor time, if folks just want to follow up with an email, that's great too. I'm happy to continue the conversation in whatever way makes sense.
Grace, don't leave because you're the star of this video. You and Ty.
Well, Courtney, do you wouldn't want to show it, or I can show it as well?
Um,
Either way.
I have it pulled up, so why don't I show it? I'm gonna turn my volume way up to make sure that you all can hear it.
Okay.
Um, can you hear that, Ty?
No,
Can't hear it at all.
it's coming in and out.
Yeah.
But
I'm
your
gonna mute
internet,
myself. Or no, I can't mute myself.
yeah. Courtney, your internet was cutting out a little bit before. How about I try it from my platform?
Sure.
MRC members.
Go ahead. It's because my kids are home from school and they're taking up all the bandwidth.
No worries. Okay, let's try it.
I don't hear the audio either, Ty, for yours.
Well, I would say
Okay.
let's punt and say, maybe it's too big of a file to do on this platform. So
Yeah.
yeah, follow up, and we're happy to share with you what the video is. It's a University of Minnesota based thing, but I think that it can apply. It certainly can apply outside of the university as well. And I'll let Courtney kind of explain that a little bit before we wind up.
Yeah, we just developed it as a recruitment tool, but also just a video to demonstrate the work that we all do as a medical reserve corps, and how we provide opportunities here at the university for our students to get involved, not only in response, but in, preparedness and readiness to respond, as well as an opportunity for our faculty and staff to share their talents, share their knowledge, provide all kinds of good information and good skills and value to our unit at the University of Minnesota. Ty is one of our original members and has been really involved all throughout our Medical Reserve Corps history. And in 2024, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary as a Medical Reserve Corps. So I'll send it through. It's like literally hot off the press, so we don't have it posted anywhere yet, but I'll send it out to all of you in our group that you can watch it on your own time. And if you have any feedback for us or reactions to it, I would love to hear it. So any final words, Ty?
No, wow, it's been almost 20 years. That's amazing. Yeah. I just appreciate everybody joining us here late in the day. And my hope is from a kind of a generic foundation, you can really take this and make it your own.
All right. Thanks so much, Ty, and thanks everybody for your time.